What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Cultivate podcast. I wanted to do something a little bit different today. So we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into Katy O'Brian's training, physique, and nutrition from the upcoming film Love Lies Bleeding today. So the reason I really wanted to cover this is because this film seems pretty prevalent and important in queer popular culture right now for queer representation, body representation, and I'm definitely seeing a lot of people say that like Katy's body is just absolute physique goals, and it's really cool seeing an absolutely ripped woman with a lot of muscle taking a lead role in such a popular film. And I just think that there's so many different things to talk about with this. So I really hope you enjoy today's episode, and do let me know if you want to hear more things like this in the comments, in the DMs, shoot me a message and whatnot. I want to talk about how Katy built her body for this movie and the amount of intensity and sacrifice and work that takes a person to do. And I want to dive into what that looked like for Love Lies Bleeding, because I've managed to find a ton of information on it, not as much as I would have liked, but a fair bit to actually talk about it with you. And I want to talk about how people do this, so people are aware of how much training and the restriction and militant nutrition practices that are involved in this. Because I think a lot of people will instantly see some queer representation and think, I need to look like that. And this is absolutely not the case. I just want to kind of preempt this episode as well by saying that although there is awesome queer representation in this movie, this is only certain body types, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there are only two body standards for queer people. As we know, the awesome thing about queer bodies is they come in all different shapes, sizes, physiques, and Katy's is just an example of one. And what I really loved about Katy's prep for this film was that she was really transparent about it all. And I wish there was more of that in the mainstream media anyway. So it brought me a lot of joy that, you know, a queer film was this transparent about someone's journey to getting a physique that was portrayed in the movie and how hard that was. So going into Katy O'Brian's history, before she was an actress, she has been lifting weights for years. She started lifting weights with her dad and went on to lift weights with her mates in high school. She says that she got into lifting weight seriously like 10 years ago. And she actually spent her 20s in Indiana's bodybuilding circuit. So for this movie, she was really well accustomed to a typical bodybuilder prep because it's something that she had done before. And the thing that she said led her to bodybuilding was that she just wanted to feel really confident about her body, and that's why she started pursuing it, which I think is awesome. It sounds like she has always been a really, really active person outside of this as well. She has a martial arts background. She took martial arts when she was a kid so she could defend herself against bullies at her school, and she eventually ended up teaching martial arts at UCLA before she was an actress. Before we dive into how she trains and how she ate for the movie Love Lies Bleeding, her background is in exercise. Her background is in sports, and she had a really strong foundation for building that physique, and she had done it many times before for bodybuilding shows, which is a pretty key piece of information when we look at the overall results that she got for this movie. And one of the reasons that Katy was chosen for this role was that she built the film company E39, a PowerPoint presentation talking about her extensive background as a bodybuilder. So she included like old competition photos. She listed all the contests that she'd done. She talked about her training experience. And apparently a big part of the audition process banked on her ability to achieve the physique she did for the film. So it's a lot of pressure to put on someone to bank that they're going to build this kind of physique for a movie. So absolutely fair play for anyone that does this. Bodybuilding is hard anyway. Doing it for a movie, I'm guessing, is probably way harder. Now, Katy suffers from Chron's disease, and she's talked about this a lot because she is pretty passionate about representing herself as a queer woman with an autoimmune disease. And obviously we know Chron's is pretty hard to live with, pretty debilitating at the best of times. So pursuing any sport, never mind bodybuilding, with Chron's is really, really tough. And before she actually started filming the movie, her doctor said she needed immediate surgery to remove 5 centimeters worth of scar tissue in her small intestine, which was putting her at major risk for having a bowel obstruction. But she luckily managed to find a surgeon who would give her the surgery after she had filmed the movie, based on the fact that she wasn't in any immediate pain, which again just shows how passionate she was about doing this in the first place. So getting into how she actually approached and trained for the role, one of the references that she spoke about was a movie called Pumping Iron 2: The Women, which was like a 1985 bodybuilding movie. It's really hard to find, but if you YouTube it, it is there. So I've managed to find the workout split that she did specifically for Love Lies Bleeding, and it was a 6-day-a-week split, which is fairly standard for people that do bodybuilding. However, the sessions were 3 hours long, and that was while she was shooting the movie for the best part. She started training 2 weeks before the movie started filming. So we got 2 days of chest, shoulders, and triceps, 2 days of back, biceps, and traps, 2 days of legs. She had 1 day off a week, and then she did 30 to 45 minutes of training her abs specifically every day, which she said she found annoying. I absolutely would. There is absolutely no chance I would do isolated ab training for 45 minutes every day. That would be so boring. And she also did an hour of uphill walking on a treadmill every day for like low intensity, steady state cardio. So that was obviously keeping her energy expenditure really, really high. And on top of running around on a movie set all day, her energy output must have been pretty wild. Now, Katy did work with a coach for her prep for this movie. He was called Steve Zim, and he is a guy who essentially specializes in sculpting muscle for the camera. So very, very niche. But what I thought was really cool about this is you often see people that train people for movies talk about how they get their actors to work to really, really extreme lengths of fatigue, soreness, and tiredness. But what Steve Zim actually did was customize Katy's workouts every single day, and he would adjust her workout routine based on her fatigue levels, her muscle soreness, which is great because obviously 3-hour sessions, 6 days a week, that's a huge amount of overtraining. Very few people in the world, including athletes, will ever do that volume of training depending on what their sport is. But it was important for them to make this sustainable for her, especially with Crohn's. So the fact that he was clearly really, really hands-on with adapting her training as she needed it is a little bit more of a sustainable and holistic approach, and it's cool that it was a thing and it wasn't just hustle culture, grind culture, like what's come out recently about Taylor Swift's coach for the Eras Tour saying that anyone that tried the workout would throw up. It was kind of a breath of fresh air, really, hearing that, yeah, she worked really, really hard, but it was done with a very compassionate approach, and they checked in with her energy levels every day, which as a coach is so, so important for me to do every week with my clients as well. And this is what good coaches should be promoting, sustainable approaches to exercises, even in this really weird film prep process that Katy underwent for the film. Now, what I thought was really cool about how Katy approached this role, she really emphasized the importance of listening to her body and being kind to herself and showing self-compassion, which we know is so, so important, but often can get overlooked, and people will always focus on hustle culture, grind culture. And I think it's wicked how open she's been about managing her condition and talking about how much she had to pay attention to trigger foods and prioritizing rest, because 3-hour workouts 6 times a week, 1 day off with extra abs and cardio is so, so much. And then think about performing as an actor on top of that is a massive struggle. And she also said that she really wanted to be visible as an actor taking part in a physical role while she successfully managed her Crohn's disease. And she absolutely managed to do that with the support of everyone around her on the set, which is awesome because, as we know, with any chronic illness, any disease, it can be so, so debilitating, and it really can make you feel like you can't have the same opportunities as other people. And one of the things I managed to dig out was caffeine. And obviously, A lot of bodybuilders really do rely on caffeine to get them through workouts, especially when their body is completely depleted. They're maybe not eating a huge amount of food when they're trying to cut weight to look more vascular. They're doing so much cardio, their energy expenditure is so high, they're doing long workouts. So Katy actually said that caffeine was one of the triggers that exacerbated her GI issues. So the fact that she actually did this without caffeine as a supplement is pretty wild as well, because my God, I would need so many cups of coffee if I was doing that amount of work every day. Now, obviously, nutrition is a really, really big part of being able to build and maintain a physique that lean and that vascular during any period of time. And the nutrition has to be pretty militant, and we'll see bodybuilders going through phases of cutting and bulking. And with Katy, she doesn't actually talk about what that process looked like. But what we do know is the studio did get her a nutritionist and a meal prep service, and they would make all the meals for her. So all she had to do throughout her whole prep and throughout the filming was actually eat what was prepared for her. And it also meant that she then didn't have to worry about trigger foods that would trigger her Crohn's. Now, obviously, having access to a nutritionist and a meal prep service is not something that a lot of people do have. And what that does mean is if you are just given a heap of food to eat and being told this is what you need to eat every day to get to where you need to be, you don't have to go to the grocery store, you don't have to buy or prepare any food, that instantly gets a lot easier to manage. So the privilege that comes with that is definitely going to make it easier to navigate the nutritional side of things, especially if you've got someone cooking meals that adhere to all your dietary needs and also ensure that you are going to have the physique you need by the end of the film. Now, the scene in Love Lies Bleeding that has been plastered all over the internet is that bodybuilding competition scene, and we see a lot of downlighting, Katy posing. She looks insanely ripped, really, really vascular. You can see all the muscle striations, and that requires a whole different level of preparation. So that's the next thing that we're going to talk about. Now, because the movie was filmed chronologically, it meant that Katy had like a 2-month head start to prepare for this one competition scene. So clearly there was a really, really big emphasis on how important it was to have the physique she had for this scene. This would definitely be comparable to someone prepping for a bodybuilding competition, but almost like an extreme version, because Katy wasn't just going on stage for 5 or 10 minutes to pose. That scene supposedly was a 12-hour filming day. So how many times she had to do that in such a depleted state is absolutely bonkers. It definitely would have really pushed her to the limits for sure. So what I found out about this scene was a week before filming it, the plan was for Katy to shed a ton of water weight so she would look as vascular and her muscles would look as tight as possible and you could see the separation in them. So to do this, she had to do a pretty extreme dehydration cycle. This basically involves significantly cutting her water consumption over several days, and she shed 10 pounds of water weight solely for that scene. Now, why I think this is so important to mention is because this is a temporary process for a temporary look. And it's very much something that bodybuilders do before a comp to have their skin super tight. So you can see that vascularity, so you can see muscle striations. It's not necessarily something you maintain. And I think this is often where people can get really hung up that like, oh, I don't look like that. I'm never going to look like that. People don't ever permanently look like that. It is a temporary state done for bodybuilding competitions or in this instance in a film, which I feel like often isn't talked about enough really. So the physique you see in that movie, specifically in that really, really hyped up advertised bodybuilding scene, that is not a year-round maintainable physique, just like bodybuilders who don't maintain their comp physique all year round. And I think it's pretty cool that they've actually been open about this in the first place. They've chosen to put out the information that Katy did a big water cut to look like that. And I think potentially this is maybe the most transparently I've ever seen someone talk about getting ripped for a movie. Because when we think of cinema, specifically action movies, where you often see a male with their top off, like running over buildings, what's that really famous movie that Will Smith ran topless for and the work he did to get to that scene. It's something that happens a lot, but it's not something that people talk about. And when I dug into all the info on this, Katy said that the biggest challenge in filming that scene was actually flexing and posing for those extended periods of time to actually film it. So that's kind of what I suspected. That's going to be so different when you pose for 5 to 10 minutes in a bodybuilding competition, and then you have to do it over and over again, take after take for a day of filming when you are so depleted, so dehydrated, running on so little energy. Now, Katy explicitly said that she wanted to challenge herself with this physique build and actually see what she was capable of. So she was really pushing herself to the limit here, maybe even more so than for her bodybuilding comps that she's done in the past. But what is important that we keep remembering is that Katy was a bodybuilder in her 20s and she has trained for over 10 years. So the foundation that she had already, the muscle mass that she had already, that was the foundation for her prep. So someone starting without that 10 years of experience, their journey might be completely different. And training for 3 hours, 6 times a week with all that cardio, if you didn't have 10 years of lifting weights experience, if you didn't have the sporting background she had, would probably be really, really different. Now, bodybuilding isn't something that we talk about massively on the podcast, but for people that don't know a lot about it, it's a pretty extreme sport based on the requirements of nutrition and exercise. You have to be very, very militant. You have to spend a lot of time eating in a deficit to strip your body of fat. You have to then try and maintain your muscle mass. And for everyday folk, this is not the healthiest approach to exercise and nutrition at all. So for an everyday gym goer, training 6 times a week for 3 hours and depleting yourself of water, eating a really restricted diet just to see vascularity in your muscles, it's not going to be sustainable. And this is the thing that I really wanted to talk about. Because whilst Katy's physique is killer for this movie, it's so impressive, it's definitely important to note that this just isn't sustainable for most people. And a lot of people getting into lifting that see this movie won't necessarily realize how long it takes to build muscle, especially beginners. So having a coach, a nutritionist, a meal prep service, the support of a film studio, having this huge amount of help on a professional level has contributed to that physique. So if you find yourself negatively comparing your body to hers, which I've had a couple of conversations with clients about in the run up to this movie coming out, we need to remember she'd been lifting weights for a long time. It takes a long time to build a ton of muscle consistently. And the push for the movie physique was done temporarily in an extremely controlled environment with a lot of financial backing. And that's not a normal thing for an everyday gym goer. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of privilege, and it's very, very Hollywood. I really don't think there's anything wrong with people really pushing for a lean and muscular physique, but it's really important that we don't despair or compare ourselves over the bodies people with a whole team behind them can build. Most of us do not have access to that. I'd argue like less than 1% of the world have access to that, right? And bringing this episode full circle, I think the question that I wanted to answer is there anything wrong or disordered with training like a bodybuilder? And bodybuilding definitely has a lot of disordered tendencies. So if your relationship with food, with your body, with your exercise isn't in a good spot, it can lead you down a very, very slippery slope. I know a lot of people in this industry that have competed and absolutely hated it, never wanted to put themselves through it again. I know some people who absolutely love it as their sport. But for a gym goer that wants to build some muscle because it makes them feel good, I don't think there's anything wrong with training like a bodybuilder. I'd say a huge portion of people that are in the gym strive to train like a bodybuilder. But what often is neglected to be mentioned is the hours of graft and the control and adherence that you have to have over nutrition, lifestyle, and social life. It is a really, really restrictive lifestyle. Bodybuilders prepping for a comp spend so much of their year eating in an energy deficit, feeling tired, feeling depleted. They lose their sex drive, their energy. Folks with menstrual cycles will get to a point where their body fat is so low that they will lose them, and that isn't healthy. So it is definitely a path that you need to tread with extreme caution. And the best advice I could give to anyone that enjoys that style of training and wants to pursue it more would be to be a little bit more relaxed on the nutrition front, preserve your relationship with food, with your body, and with exercise. There is nothing wrong with training like a bodybuilder, but it doesn't mean you necessarily have to think about eating and competing like one if you just want to build some muscle and feel good and strong in your body. Now, the last thing that I want to finish out this episode on is to talk about how bodybuilding styles of training can really bring a lot of gender euphoria to a lot of people. The cool thing about resistance training, about strength training and building muscle is it can make us feel really good and euphoric in our bodies. But what affirms one person in their body might not necessarily make another person feel affirmed and euphoric in theirs. It's never going to be the same for everyone. And obviously there are a lot of stereotypes, especially around trans mass people. But when we talk about queer and trans folk feeling affirmed and euphoric in their bodies, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. So an example here would be, I really enjoy building up the muscles in my shoulders and my back, whereas a lot of my clients, they will really enjoy building up their arms. Some of my clients just really enjoy the actual feeling of feeling strong and functional and capable, as opposed to how their muscles actually look. And there is absolutely no wrong answer here. And I don't think we should be shaming people for wanting a muscular physique, but I also don't think we should ever shame people for not caring about having a muscular physique either. It's all about you and what your flavor is. And if you have aesthetic goals with your training, as well as long-term health, strength, and longevity, then that's not a problem at all. Food relationship and exercise relationship are so important. And if that's in a good spot and you want to pursue the aesthetic side of bodybuilding, getting a bit of support with it, working with a coach, following a plan to build the body that feels right for you can be a really, really powerful and empowering thing, especially for queer and trans folk. I think when I originally found lifting weights, what I loved about it was how powerful and strong it made me feel. And one of the quotes I found from Katy when I was researching this episode kind of sums it up for me. She said she originally got into bodybuilding because she loved how powerful it made her feel. And although it's been years since she actually did a bodybuilding competition, lifting weights is still her go-to to managing stress. Now, obviously, Katy did go back to training, eating, living like a bodybuilder for the prep for this film. But I'm pretty safe in probably assuming that she doesn't train 6 days a week for 3 hours a day, walk on a treadmill every single day, uphill for an hour, and do 45 minutes of abs every single day. And essentially, if she did do that every day, she would massively be overtraining. For a short period of time, under really monitored and controlled conditions with a ton of support, yes, you probably can do it safely. Would I recommend anyone to do this day to day alongside a full-time job, a life, everything else? Probably not. But I have absolutely loved everything that has come out of this movie. The amount of queerness that's been put out into the mainstream media and film industry is awesome. Long may it continue. If you're going to see the movie this weekend, I hope you enjoy it. It's wicked. And yeah, let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments, in the Instagram DMs, wherever you're listening to this podcast. So for any humans that are wanting a little bit of support with their training and nutrition, and they want to build a body that makes them feel awesome in a sustainable way, keeping their food relationship, their exercise relationship intact, you are exactly the type of person that I love working with, that I love to help. And the thing I love about Fuzz Culture Club is some people have aesthetic goals, some people have strength goals, some people have goals within sport. We have people doing all sorts in the team, but everyone is so supportive of everyone's goals in the community. And while not everyone is necessarily working towards the same thing, we very much all share the same values and morals when it comes to training on your terms, not compromising your beliefs, your food relationship. So if that sounds like your vibe, fill in the form in the show notes, tell me a little bit about yourself, and I will do the rest. I'll be in touch with you and we can chat about coaching. And for any of you listening that identify as trans mass, I do have an app subscription called Superhuman. It's $14.99 a month. You can do a 7-day free trial. And this is a plan for trans mass beginners looking to build muscle and feel amazing in their body. I'm actually working on an intermediate version now. So if you are someone who has a bunch of experience in the gym, you want a trans mass program, but you don't necessarily want a beginner one, slide into my DMs because I've got a few people trialing it for me at the moment and giving me feedback. So let me know. I hope you all have a good rest of your week. I hope you've enjoyed me doing something a little bit different with the podcast today. Take it easy, Cultivate family. That's me out.